Hey everyone, welcome to More Layers again. I'm Seth Mariano.
And I am Jordan Smith.
Yeah, I know it's been a while, we have been gone for a while with the holidays and my sister home
hmm
from college and um and I guess with Jordan's work or voice acting class whatever, but we're back and we're ready to go.
Yeah, it was mainly due to the holidays, but now that those have passed and we finally have a chance to settle down, we can get right back into the swing of things.
So during the holiday season, like on the night of December 23rd, I went and saw Spider-Man No Way Home,
Oh,
which
yep.
I believe Jordan has also watched.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly when I saw it. I want to say it was right before or right after Christmas, but it was pretty close.
Yeah, well, I have to say that this is I think this is the best Spider-Man flick that I've ever seen, and since watching Homecoming and No Way Home to prepare for it, I have to say that my favorite Spider-Man actor now is got to be Tom Holland.
Out of curiosity, do you mean Far From Home?
Homecoming and Far From Home.
Yeah,
I
because the
think I
first time
said that.
you said No Way Home the first time.
Did I?
Yeah, it's perfectly fine. I mean, the titles are very similar, but I figured we clarify. Uh,
Yeah, they're all pretty similar, aren't they?
Title wise, yeah. And don't worry, viewers, we're not going to spoil the movie if you haven't seen it yet.
Anyway, it's I think it was an interesting film, and uh, I would recommend anybody into Spider-Man or Marvel or whatever ever give it a look, and I think you might have fun with it.
Oh, absolutely. I would definitely put it up there as one of my favorite Spider-Man movies, if not just favorite Marvel movies in general.
Well, let's move on now to the big talk we have for today. This season of More Layers. We're focusing on broad topics and doing a sort of question and answer format. And our topic this time is competitions.
Yeah. And it's not one particular type of competition either. It can cover sports, different events that involve people just competing against each other one way or another. It can be a political thing. There's a wide array.
Well, and so, I wrote down a few questions and I've put down my own answers. And so I'm going to go ahead and read the first one here.
Sure.
What's so appealing about seeing people compete against each other?
And there can definitely be a multitude of answers for that because, everyone's different. What I put down, though, is that it can often bring about an adrenaline rush or some other sense of excitement. Watching others compete, especially when there are some fun stakes involved, such as a grand prize of a tournament. And while it isn't always a healthy process, rivalries between people or groups often causes a fire inside of somebody to light, especially when those rivalries come face to face and compete against each other, like in sports or some political figures. There is such a thing as a healthy rivalry, but oftentimes a rivalry can often, I realize I said often multiple times. Anyway, can often have each side hold some sort of malice or hatred towards the other side simply because they're the opposite side.
Well, I put down because, I have a copy of a biography about John F. Kennedy, and one of the big things, one of like the hottest topics of his day when it came to like public policy and politics was communism. There was back then in the United States there was a whole big concern about the influence or spread of communism, which essentially is when government essentially controls everything in society. And according to the book, look, the biggest reason, I feel like the way they phrased it, that it was such a concern to people back in the day was because they figure if communism came into place in a society and it essentially, by the purest definition, made things so similar for everybody, and people would not have an incentive to work hard at something or try their best for things. And what competition generally seems to do, for one thing, is to bring out people's strongest work ethic or strongest drive to achieve something or be productive at something.
Sure.
I also put down there was a comment. I think Al Michaels, the Monday Night Football play-by-play commentator now, he's on Sunday Night Football for NBC. He was interviewed. I don't know if this was during the interview with Late Night with Seth Meyers. One time he said that he described sports as like the one true reality program, nothing scripted. And so things can get unpredictable and you might not know what's going to happen next.
I mean, often when they are showing sporting events on live TV, it's live TV, so they can't really plan when things go wrong. Like it's not scripted. They don't know what's going to happen most of the time. So when something does go awry, they either have to quickly cut away, or if they can't, then whatever's going on is going to be seen on live television.
The most appealing thing probably is when it's an underdog who defeats the odds. Like for one example, there was the 2001 Super Bowl between the New England Patriots and then St. Louis-based Rams. Back then, before the Patriots were pretty much arguably the Goliath of the NFL, that position was pretty much held by the Rams. They were pretty much considered the best of the best.
Right.
They had won the year before, and they were highly favored to win again. And they got close, but in the end, the Pats came on top and barely beat them to win it all.
Yeah, and then not too long after, the Patriots really started to shine for quite a while. And then, not to sound biased too much, but another example of an underdog story was Super Bowl 52, where my team, the Eagles, faced the Patriots. And of course, with Tom Brady being there, a lot of people's money was on Brady. But we pulled off a win by about 8, and
yeah, it was 8.
I certainly wasn't complaining.
And so then I wrote down, how has competition affected society as a whole?
Yeah, and I noticed you wrote down megachurch, but I wasn't entirely sure what that was.
Yeah, well, from what I understand, it's like churches with multiple campuses.
Okay.
So I took the idea from Sky Jatani, whom I've mentioned before on this podcast, who's an author, podcaster, and preacher. He has talked about, he talked once on one of his podcasts about a portion of a book that he wrote called The Divine Commodity. And there's one section in the book where he discussed a sort of trend among megachurches, like running their operations like commercial businesses, and trying to cater to people's tastes and trying to outdo similar congregations. So
Okay.
that would be an example. That would be an example, I think, of going too far, or somebody having their priorities out of order.
Yeah, I would definitely say so.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I think maybe some congregations get too focused on, destroying other ones, and winning people into their rows, and that they forget, that's not the point of the church. The point of the church is like a community and influence.
Yeah, it's pretty much the equivalent of knocking others down to build themselves up. It's not really what you want to be doing. If anything, I feel like churches under different names would do better communicating with each other in a very civil manner, and then they can work together to get something really big going, like raising money for people who are suffering, for example, or just looking for ways to bring people into each church, regardless of where they decide to go, and say something like, "Hey, here's our overall mission. Multiple churches are doing this. Here's where you can find some of them."
Yeah. The other thing I put down after that, under that question, is politics. Another case probably of winning being prioritized like it shouldn't be, above helping people. So I think this is clearly seen, mhm, when you see the two major parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, going at each other,
Yep.
whether it be if they're competing for a congressional seat, or perhaps most famously at the national conventions when they nominate presidential nominees. So, yep, and they go
Yeah,
so far as to try to paint the other side or the opponent as like satanic, and go on and on and on about look what's wrong with this other guy, and they play the relativism card, I guess you could say. Well,
right.
I should win because this guy's an idiot.
Yeah, really, what they're supposed to do, or at least what I feel like they should do, is be like, if you elect me, these things will happen, or this certain bad thing will stop happening, or something like that. You don't want to necessarily jab at the other person, even though that's pretty much what they do all the time now. And really, in political competitions like that, they've strayed away from, not completely, but people on in both parties, not just one or the other, but they will focus more on, or rather focus less on what is best for the country, and focus more on who can get the most power so that their specific agenda can be filled out.
Or shout the loudest.
Yeah, pretty much. Like it's no secret that the I'm trying to think of the presidential debate between Trump and Biden was pretty much chaos, because both of them were cutting each other off. Trump especially was kind of notorious for that. But it just did not go well for either one of them. And I forget what the official title, but the person overseeing it was not making it any better.
Well, from what I saw, I think the moderator was trying to keep it all in line, but the candidates just pretty much, or at least one of them, just kept ignoring her.
Yeah, the moderator at points was trying to keep it level or civil, whatever word you want to use, but it was just not working out. And then some of the things I don't remember any specific examples, but I remember the moderator was saying or doing things that were kind of questionable. Not that it affected it too much, because both candidates were still being idiots in one way or another. But yeah, no one was really helping all that much. They weren't exactly making themselves look good.
And so, another question I put down: what are some ways in which competition has gone too far? Which we probably, to some degree or another, kind of already answered. But I put down a few things I thought that maybe one thing I guess I want to touch on is I guess this is sort of an expansion on the idea of winning prioritized above people, and that is the probably lesser talked about story of Chappaquiddick. It was an incident that happened in 1969, and a movie not too long ago was made about it. I'll try to break it down. All right.
Sure. Go ahead.
All right. So in the summer of 1969, Massachusetts Senator Ted Kennedy, who was the youngest brother of President John F. Kennedy, I believe he was running for president at the time. He had been at a party and he had drank probably too much, and then her and a woman went out. He was driving. So they're driving in this car, and somehow Ted lost control of the car, ended up hurtling upside down into a pond. Ted escaped from the wreck, got out of the car. It is believed that he tried to get the woman out but couldn't, and then he gave up, swam back to the hotel, went to bed, and the woman was stuck there under the water with an air pocket and ran out of air and died.
So it sounds like he might have given up a little too soon then.
And probably, from what I heard about it from the Movie Proposal podcast, is that which is probably the worst thing about it was that he and his people, his dad, desperately tried to cover up what had happened and tried to keep it a secret from everybody, pretty much, and so he could still have a shot at the presidency.
Yeah, that you can't do. And once that comes to light, because it most likely inevitably will, then they're all going to look at him from a totally different angle and lose respect for him anyway. And if he did get into office, then they would do whatever they could after they hear about this story to get him out.
I don't know, because another thing that was mentioned in the podcast that I mentioned was that they had some actual news footage of people asking, who apparently found out about it, will you vote for him again? And they all said, yeah, I would.
Even after this story was public?
Broke?
Or...
Yeah, I guess they knew about it.
That's kind of twisted, actually.
Yeah. I think it's sick.
It really is. It's like if you pretty much let someone die simply because you give up, then you go to a hotel and sleep. I wouldn't be able to sleep after something like that happened. And you don't contact authorities or anyone that might actually be able to make a difference, and then try to cover it up just so your face on the campaign will still look promising, I guess, then that should be immediate removal from office, banned from ever trying again, at the very least.
I did have just one last question, and I wrote, what are some realistic ways to keep competition from leading to problems?
I mean, I guess that could depend on like what type of competition it is. But I tried to have a general statement here by saying that it kind of depends on what the spectators are consuming, such as, for example, alcoholic beverages. When needed, maybe filter out the nasty fans or hecklers that are causing problems to ease the tension. Because at many sporting events, there have been people drinking beer, doing something stupid, and once they get removed, everything goes back to normal, and people can almost forget about it. And then one big problem in the NFL, I keep bringing it back to this, but that's only because it's a highly competitive thing in the US, uh, are all the notorious controversies surrounding the referees and the calls that they should or should not have been made, especially when it costs a team the game or the whole series, tournament, playoffs, Super Bowl, whatever. And in case of emergencies or things really start to go south for one reason or another, it's probably a good idea to keep some form of security around or some sort of medical something or other in case people start to get hurt.
I pretty much just highlighted stuff that's already being done.
Sure.
So I guess I would say, hey, that we're doing the best we can. Like one example I put down was, in the Jeopardy tournaments, generally what they'll do is they'll give everyone some amount of money, everyone who participates in it, depending on how high they finish or how far they go or whatever. So like losing quarterfinalists might get something like $5,000 apiece, and second and third place maybe like something like 75 and 50,000 respectively.
Wheel of Fortune kind of does that too, don't they? Not necessarily in a tournament, but they'll often at least give the participants some form of cash prize.
Well, at the minimum, everybody walks away with at least $1,000.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's also, this may be obvious to most of you, but there's a trend of highlight videos. Like if you're watching a halftime report or a montage or reel video on a Big Four sports organization's website or on their YouTube, you can find dozens of highlight videos or compilations of spectacular plays that are exciting to watch, and it highlights how well somebody played a game or made a play. And so in that way, people can probably feel like less pressure
Sure.
to be a winner, or they can feel content that they've more or less done their job out there.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And then, as many of you may know, there's the trend of including honorable mentions in countdown lists. Like WatchMojo.com does that all the time. Jordan did that with with at least one of his Pokemon countdowns.
I think I had some sort of honorable mention list for most of the top 10 lists I've done, and I haven't done that many. Although I think for my top 10 Sonic characters, I might have not done that. But yeah, for most of the Pokemon ones, I've done some sort of honorable or dishonorable mention just to include some entries that people might have possibly hoped to see that I could agree with them on. It's like, yeah, maybe I wouldn't put it in the top 10, but they were pretty close. So if you didn't see it in the top 10, you can at least be relieved in the fact that you saw it somewhere.
And then many of you probably know about these things called All-Star games, Major League All-Star Game, NBA, NFL Pro Bowl, where it's pretty much a gathering of the best, and they're there to kind of showcase what they've got, and like the cream of the crop all get together and compete.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the Pro Bowl is that they used to have that game played after the Super Bowl. But the problem was, by the time the Super Bowl is over, people register it as the season being over, so no one's going to watch the Pro Bowl. So now in the week between the Super Bowl and the last game of the playoffs, that's where they have the Pro Bowl now. And of course, with the Super Bowl still coming, more people will watch it.
Well, yeah, so overall, I guess, we're doing pretty good to keep it in check. I suppose if we try, we could find new ways, but we're doing pretty good, I guess.
Yeah, just keep looking for ways to improve. And in the meantime, for now, things are generally okay. Generally. I don't know if it can ever really be perfected to make things better or completely safe or anything. They can only put so many rules in place to limit what players or competitors can or cannot do.
Well, if these really are the last of the last days, like my pastor says, things are probably just going to get worse and worse until it all ends and the new earth comes.
Well, while this is a conversation for a different time, it's hard to say, I think, that it's the end of the end or anything, because while some signs may be starting to appear, it also says in the Bible, no one except God actually knows when the end is.
True.
So really all we can do is be the best versions of ourselves that we can be, and should that day come while we're around, we can be well prepared for it.
Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God.
Exactly.
Well, why don't we move on now to our game time portion of the show, where one or more of us quizzes the other one, or we do some kind of a game. And um, earlier we mentioned Spider-Man: No Way Home, the new Spider-Man flick, and after I saw that movie, I looked up, aggregate scores for Spider-Man films on Rotten Tomatoes, and No Way Home, which is the new one,
Yeah.
apparently has, or at least had at the time, the highest aggregate score among the live-action Spidey flicks. The highest rated overall being the animated one, Into the Spider-Verse.
Which I know at some point had a perfect score. I don't know if it still does or not. It's still pretty high, like a 98, 99 or something, but I can't remember if it actually stayed at 100.
I believe it said No Way Home was 97.
Which is still very good. Pretty much anything in like the 60s or 70s is deemed as okay, and then anything 80s or higher is generally reserved to be like good or really good.
And so, uh, and so after that, I remembered there's a whole long list on the internet of films, of titles that have gotten perfect scores, that have maintained perfect scores on Rotten Tomatoes. And so I thought today I would quiz Jordan on a few of them, see if he can try and guess a few of them.
Well, there's one that I knew for certain. I'm pretty sure one of the Toy Story films had 100%.
The first one, yeah.
Okay, it was the first one. I couldn't remember if it was the first or the second, but I was pretty sure one of the two had 100%.
So I wrote down a few questions, or they kind of read like clues, and so these are all films that hold 100% aggregate score.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll read the first one here. So this film has been made 4 times. The 30s version is the one with the perfect score. The most recent version starred Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper and included an Oscar-winning original song.
When did the most recent one come out?
I think 2018.
Let's see. it's been remade 4 separate times, you said?
There are 4 versions of it.
4 versions, okay. The first one from the 30s had 100%. My first thought was Little Women, but I'm not certain on that.
It was A Star Is Born.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Did you see that one?
I hadn't seen that one, although I remember when it first came out, there were so many people talking about how much of a tearjerker it was.
It's I won't spoil details, but it's bittersweet.
Yeah, that's the general consensus that I heard about that film. So
yeah, there was the first one made in the 30s, and then I think the 50s. There was a remake starring Judy Garland, and then in the 70s, one with Barbara Streisand and I think Chris Christopherson, and then the one most people our age are probably familiar with, the new one, Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, and the song "Shallow" won Best Original Song.
okay.
Yeah. All right. Next one says, this was Disney's second animated feature release, and it introduced a song that has since been immortalized as Disney's official theme song.
Pinocchio?
That's it.
Okay, because I know at the beginning of most Disney films, especially now, they'll start off with a starry sky, zoom out to see the castle, and you hear "When You Wish Upon a Star" being played.
Yeah.
What's kind of funny though is that I looked up a list of films on Rotten Tomatoes that have a 0%, and there was a film from 2002 also called Pinocchio.
I think that was the one that Roberto Benigni, the Life is Beautiful guy, did.
Oh, maybe. I wasn't sure who did it. I just found a list and it happened to also be called Pinocchio.
Yeah, I think I remember hearing that one was really panned.
I'll have to look into why some of these films failed so hard. I know there was a film called Masters of Disguise that had a 1% that came out when I was younger, but I never saw that either.
Oh, well, they're on the board then.
Yeah, that they
Better
have
than
something.
0.
Yeah.
Better than 0.
Still not a respectable number, but hey.
All right. And so the next one says, it is believed that this movie was the first to use the song White Christmas, and it's also the name of a major hotel chain.
Well, I doubt it's the movie called White Christmas.
No.
Although that is a good movie. Let's see. I remember around Christmas time, I was being told that there was several movies that played that song. Let's see. See, what year did this one come out?
I don't know.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. I
It's
figured
it's an old one though.
My first guess is the original Miracle on 34th, but that's just a wild shot in the dark.
It's a movie called Holiday Inn.
Oh, yeah. Why did I say that when you also said that it was the same name as a hotel chain? I totally forgot about that tidbit.
No problem. Okay. I got 2 more here. Next
Okay.
one is, this Disney anthology film was based on a series of British books. And though it's technically an animated film, it started and ended with live action footage.
Could you say that again?
Okay. This Disney anthology film was based on a series of British books. And though it's technically an animated film, it started and ended with live action footage.
Disney anthology film that has both animated and live action moments. It's not Mary Poppins, is it?
Nope.
Because that had animation in it. And my first thought was Narnia, but that's also not animated.
Well, not hand drawn anyway.
Well, yeah, there were multiple live action adaptations at one point. A Disney anthology, live action and animation. I feel like I'm going to kick myself for this one.
But do you
'Cause
have an idea?
The only other Disney film I can think of off the top of my head that has animation and live action was Song of the South, but that was notorious for some possibly questionable content.
That's not that one either. It was The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, I suppose it did have live action in it because I think it had shots of what was supposedly Christopher Robin's room.
Right, yes. Yes, and then, took you to the book, the storybook opened up, and then it closed at the end, and we're back. We get the shot with the bear, and
Right.
and they close it out.
And doesn't the stuffed version of Pooh, doesn't he like wink before it fades to black?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I still have that one somewhere. Maybe I'll watch it soon.
Oh, yeah. It's also on Disney Plus.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. Yeah, just pretty much everything Winnie the Pooh related is on there. The New Adventures series, the Book of Pooh, and Pooh's Grand Adventure.
I forget which series this was technically from, but I remember a VHS I had where the animation featured them with like a toy train and they pretended they were in some sort of Western.
There might have been a New Adventures episode. They did like a Western theme once on the TV show.
That sounds right. I'll check this out after we're done later.
Yeah, there was one episode I revisited a little bit of it because I vaguely remembered it, and
Sure.
so it was sort of a bunch of the characters put on this sort of Western setting play in which Piglet was a sheriff.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. All right, I got one last one here. So this documentary, made by rock musician Dave Grohl, focuses on the studio that produced the Nevermind album by Nirvana, a band in which Grohl himself had played drums. After that film did well, Grohl decided to make a similarly titled follow-up miniseries called Sonic Highways, which ran on HBO in 2014. Yeah, I know that's a lot.
It's definitely a lot. I'm honestly not sure on this one.
All right. All right. Should I just give it to you?
Yeah, in this case.
Yeah, it was a documentary called Sound City.
Yeah, I haven't even heard of that one, honestly.
And I guess a lot of others haven't either. I did watch it once when I was in Canton, Ohio, when we were visiting the college where my brother eventually ended up going to college, Malone University. We were in a hotel, and we watched this movie, which is follows kind of how groundbreaking the studio was, and how new techniques, digitally based stuff, has kind of replaced the old way of doing music in a studio.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was at least a little fascinating, and evidently it did strong.
And what's the name of it again? Like
Sound
something
City.
Highway? Sound City. Okay.
Yep, yep. I also watched the miniseries Sonic Highways, which was pretty much followed the making of their album of the same name, the Foo Fighters album.
Now, is there some place where you can watch it, or do you have to get a copy of it somewhere in a store?
Of the movie.
Yeah.
Um, you could probably digitally stream it, I would guess.
Okay. Probably
Yeah,
just had to figure out which streaming service it would be a part of.
yeah, probably. Yeah. All right, so that's it for my game there.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I had pulled up a list of movies that had a 0%. I haven't heard of most of these, so I probably won't be able to go into as much detail as you were, but I'll at least
But,
give it a shot.
all right, give it your best shot.
All right. So the first one I'll tell you, it is a movie that came out in 2018 that was heavily panned, and I think it was directed by John Travolta.
2018, John Travolta directed.
I think he directed because a lot of people will say it was John Travolta's movie, so I'm assuming that means he directed it. But it's a one-word title, and it was not received well at all. Hence it why it had a 0.
Mm. Uh, well, the one title I came up with was Us, but I'm pretty sure that's a Jordan Peele film.
No, it's not that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
It's a film called Gotti, spelled Gotti.
Hmm. Gotti.
Two T's.
Gotti.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Let's see if I can find one. I already told you about the Pinocchio one of 2002. Let's see. Okay, so apparently the first one on the list, it came out in 1983, and it has the same title as a famous, I think it's a Bee Gees song.
Staying Alive.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I think I vaguely heard of that movie.
All right. So you definitely got that one. This this next one came out in 87, and it is a sequel to a famous movie regarding a shark.
Hmm. Jaws 2.
Well, it doesn't say what number, but it's saying Jaws: The Revenge, which I'm assuming is the second movie.
So it's a Jaws sequel or
Yeah,
Jaws follow up.
yeah. I want to say there were at least 3 or 4 Jaws movies somehow.
Does anybody know?
I'm sure there are some people out there who know the answer to that. All I know is that the first Jaws movie, the shark got blown up, so I don't know what shark would have been in the following movies.
Probably just a capitalization effort.
Yeah, probably. Same thing with Sharknado movies. They're so stupid, but there's a cult following behind them, and they keep making more.
Though the concept in and of itself seems scary enough.
It does seem scary, and they kind of relish on the fact that people knew a lot of their effects were very low budget. Like you could tell they were fake, but they kind of rolled with it. see, what would be one that I can describe? Let's see if I can find one more. Okay, so I got one here. Let's see. Okay, I got two more. This next one came out in 2007. It's a one-word title, and it shares the same name as a major Lion King character.
I might have to go down the list for this one. I'll guess Scar.
Yeah, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, Seth and I actually did, albeit in separate halves of the same cast, we actually did Lion King this last fall, and Seth himself played Scar.
We were both in separate groups, performing in two different two different schedules of shows.
Yeah, we're normally one big cast of 70, 80 people, but because of the whole COVID thing, they figured it would be safer if they split the cast in half and then each half did the same show, but on different days.
And Jordan, he was the hero of the show of his group. He was Simba, adult Simba.
Yeah, I was grown up Simba.
Yeah. All right.
All right, let's see if I can describe this one.
All right.
So this movie came out in 2010, and its title, I don't know if this is what the movie's about, but the title shares the title of a big musical ballet type show.
So was it like the same title as a classic ballet?
Well, I want to say it's a musical, but there's a particular ballet number whose song also often gets played at Christmas time.
I'm thinking like the Nutcracker or Swan Lake or Black Swan.
You had it the first time.
Nutcracker.
Yeah, it is a movie specifically called The Nutcracker in 3D. And I don't know for sure if it covered the story of the Nutcracker, but that's what it's called. And I remember somebody reviewing it and saying it was pretty bad and somewhat creepy at times, but yeah, it was not well received at all.
Yeah, I'm guessing this isn't to be confused with the Nutcracker in the Four Realms.
No, it's a separate film. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Well, it does sound like it would have looked good on the big screen in the theater in 3D.
Possibly, but this particular one I don't know much about, so I can't really say. And if it has a 0%, probably not.
Yeah, well, they may be wrong, but
yeah,
I guess you just have to make a decision for yourself whether it's worth the hour or whatever you'll never get back.
yeah.
All right, so we have one final portion that we traditionally do beginning this current season: news that bites and news that rocks. News that bites meaning negative, saddening, angering, whatever. And news that rocks, something interesting, exciting, or something positive in that sort of category.
Right. And we usually like to start with news that bites so that when we get to news that rocks, we end on a high note. So what I said for news that bites is not too long ago at a mall not too far from where Seth and I live, there was a 62-year-old woman who was in a parking lot. She was attacked by three teenagers. One was 15, I think two were 14. and they stole her car. And then I don't know if this is connected, but soon after that incident took place, there was a car accident on the same road. So
Mm.
it was either two separate tragedies that happened to happen at the same time, or it was one continuous strategy that could have been prevented had it not been for these three obnoxious teenagers.
Well, not to downplay the accident, but did the thieves get caught or are taken to the station or anything?
Uh, I don't know too much of what happened after it all took place, but chances are, if they identified the three girls, their ages and such, then chances are they've caught them at this point.
All right. My one item that bites today is in an article from the website of CNN, and apparently this happened in Virginia. Apparently, a woman who's got kids, apparently their school was requiring them to wear masks. Uh, the part that bit about it for me was the woman, the mom said, if they're requiring that, I'm going to bring a gun to their school.
Yeah, that's a threat that you can't take lightly. So I would have said possibly hold off on school that day. And since they knew which mother it was, it sounds like they would send officers to her and apprehend her, or at least her weapon.
But I think the worst thing about it is, I think it's a reasonable request for the school to make, for health and safety reasons. And, based on, what I've heard from being in church and from what I've seen in the Bible about, respecting governing authorities, I think, authorities like education, government, others, they always have the right to ask reasonable things of us or require reasonable things of us. And so I think what this woman did and said is just uncalled for contempt.
Yeah. And regardless of the situation, you never want to threaten somebody with a gun. That never works out.
Reportedly, she was arrested and released on a $5,000 bond.
Okay.
So, to a degree, it was confronted.
All right. At least something was done about it.
Yeah. All right.
So for
Something that
news,
rocks.
yeah, I was debating what to say for this because there were definitely some good options. Like we made it through 2021, which means at some point we're even closer to the end of the pandemic, whenever that is. Uh, so that's definitely a big deal. What I'm gonna end up going with right now, especially since it just happened, is for those that don't know, I don't like Tom Brady. He is a player that, while he is good, he just does a bunch of things that make me lose respect for him. He just lost in the playoffs and he's out of the season completely. And chances are he might be retiring soon, to the relief of many.
Well, now, to be honest, I don't know that much about what Brady is like as a person, so I don't know how to feel about him myself. But I have seen, I did see one video moment of him that I won't get into detail about that makes me think you might be right about him, but I guess I'll leave it at that.
That's fair.
And my news that rocks is something that was reported on in a local news station here in Rochester, New York, where we are.
Yep.
And taken apparently, there is this growing development of new restaurant food service robots. robots that can deliver orders, and they can, take care of customers if they don't have enough employees. And I think that might be handy in one way or another. For one thing, I think, they can be difficult or if you've got like a whole big table of people, it can be difficult for a server to feed everybody at the same time, for one thing.
Right.
So there's at least that advantage, I think.
Yeah, I can definitely say working in a restaurant, I've seen servers get flustered when a large party is sitting down. It's sometimes gotten to the point where they have two servers working the same group at the same time simply because it's so big.
And with the pandemic, I feel, there's not a lot of employment opportunities out there as it is for places like restaurants. So, and it's been difficult for, some businesses, some restaurant businesses to even stay alive. I know I heard of one place, the Jerome Bettis Grill in Pittsburgh, that apparently fell through or is on the way to falling through because of this pandemic. For whatever reason it affected it to the point where they're probably not going to last, or they're probably gone by now.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and probably the restaurants are probably the businesses that have been, at least aside from small businesses in general, they're probably the establishments that have been hit the hardest financially by this pandemic.
Yeah, it definitely hit a lot of people financially because not as many people were going out. They were, whether by choice or by force / requirement, staying at home or just inside in general, so they didn't travel much. And of course, it really hurt businesses. There was a job I had at an escape room for about a month or two before that shut down because of COVID tanking the business.
Well, before I forget, I should probably point something out. It's I want to show everybody a little something that my sister made me for Christmas this past Christmas. And so I'm going to hold it up right now.
That's actually really good.
Yeah, my sister made that for me.
Yeah, that's good. And for those who are doing the audio only version, Seth is holding up an image to the screen of a picture his sister made of our logo.
Yeah. Yeah, so thank you, sis, again for that, and love you. Yeah, well, I guess I've run out of things to say, and you probably have too, so
yep.
I think we better call it a day, and I'll get to work on post-production, and right now, stream all our episodes on Anchor, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Google Podcasts, and please send us any questions, any thoughts, send them our way, please.
And if you have ideas for the show, if you have a particular topic that you have a lot of interest in and you want to be on the show, or at least have some of your comments featured, that's another thing you can reach out to us for. We're always looking for suggestions and any constructive criticism that'll help make the show better.
Yeah, reach out to us and we'll see what we can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, well, until next time, we are More Layers and we are out. Thanks for streaming. See you again soon.
So long, everyone.